The Oromo people are an ethnic group inhabiting Ethiopia, northern Kenya, and parts of Somalia. With around 25 million members, they constitute the single largest ethnicity in Ethiopia and the wider Horn of Africa, at approximately 35% of Ethiopia's population according to the 2007 census. Oromists speak the Oromo language as a mother tongue, which is part of the Cushitic branch of the Afro-Asiatic family. The name was given as Ilm Orma in the 19th century. The present form is probably an obsolete plural of the same word Orma. Origins. Oromus are the largest Cushitic-speaking group of people living in Northeast Africa. Available information suggests that they have existed as a community in the Horn of Africa for several millennia, while further research is needed to precisely comprehend their origins. The Oromo are believed to have originally adhered to a pastoralist, nomadic or semi-agriculturalist lifestyle. Many historians agree that some Oromo clans have lived in the southern tip of present-day Ethiopia for over a millennium. They suggest that a great trade-influenced Oromo population movement brought most Oromus to present-day central and western Ethiopia in the 16th and 17th centuries. Historical maps of the ancient Aksum, Abyssinian Empire and Adal, Somali empires indicate that Oromo people are newcomers to most of modern-day central Ethiopia. Recent history. Historically, Afan Oromo-speaking people used their own Gadar system of governance. Oromus also had a number of independent kingdoms, which they shared with the Sidamar. Among these were the Jibrejan kingdoms of Gera, Gomoth Garo, Guma, Jimma and Limuen area, as well as the kingdom of Jirin. Historically, both peaceful and violent competition and integration between Oromus and other neighboring ethnicities such as the Amhara, Sidamar and the Somali had an impact on politics within the Oromo community. The northern expansion of the Oromists such as the Yeju and, in particular the Arsi, to ethnic Somali and Sidamar territories mirrored the southern expansion of Amharas, and helped influence contemporary ethnic politics in Ethiopia. Also the Great Somali expansion from the Ogaden Plains west towards the Juba River led to conflicts with the Oromo. In some areas, Oromus and Somalis were in competition for fertile territory and natural resources. Additionally, Eastern Oromus, who had adopted Islam, were along with Somalis and Afars part of the Muslim Adal Sultanate, which under Imam Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi led a conquest of the Christian Abyssinian Empire. Historian Richard Pankhurst stated that before the coming of European powers and the creation of centralized Ethiopia, the area presently known as Ethiopia, Eritrea and Somalia constituted a galaxy of states and polities, each moving in its own orbit, but significantly affecting, and affected by, the other entities in the constellation. Each ruler kept a watchful eye on his neighbors but would often exchange gifts and courtesies with them unless actually at war. Dynastic marriages were made whenever practicable, though these only occasionally crossed barriers of religion. Commerce, on the other hand, made little distinction between faith and trade routes linked traditionalist, Christian and Muslim localities. Ethnic and linguistic communities remained largely distinct, but there was much cross-fertilization of cultures. This was true not only off the Ethiopian highlands and the Red Sea coastlands, but also further south along the Somali-Oromo frontier where later 19th century travelers reported the existence of bilingual trading communities. In the first decades of the 19th century, three Oromo monarchies, Enaria, Goma and Guma, rose to prominence. The collective area was known as Gala land and comprised most of central and southern Ethiopia, including lands now held by other ethnic regions. In the general view of Oromo people's role in Ethiopia, Ras Gobana Daka is a famous Oromo figure who led the development of modern Ethiopia and the political and military incorporation of more territories into Ethiopian borders. Gobana, under the authority of Menelik II, incorporated several Oromo territories into a centralized Ethiopian state. Some contemporary ethno-nationalist Oromo political groups refer to Gobana in a negative light, though. Before military integration, present-day Ethiopia, Eritrea, and parts of Somalia were previously inextensively linked commercially by local, long-distance and trans-frontier trade routes. These commercial routes connected Bonga, Jimma, Seqa, Asandabo, Gojam, Bigemda, Marama, Massawa, Soda, Shawa, Hara, Zila and Berbera. Some Oromo writers believe that the Oromo Raskobina and the Amhara Menelik II were the first two people in Ethiopia with the concept of national boundary that brought various different ethno-linguistic communities under a politically and militarily centralized rule. The two most important historical figures who signify the introduction of the concepts of national boundary and sovereignty in Ethiopia are Emperor Menelik II and Raskobana Dachi, who used guns manufactured in Europe to bring a large swath of buyers under a centralized rule. Ethnically mixed Ethiopians with Oromo background made up a little percentage of Ethiopian generals and leaders. The Wallowa Oromo were early Oromo holders of power among the increasingly mixed Ethiopian state. The later north-to-south movement of central power in Ethiopia led to Oromus and Shelwa holding power in Ethiopia together with the Shu and Amhara. In terms of descent, the group that became politically dominant in Shelwa, and subsequently in Ethiopia, was a mixture of Amhara and Oromo. In terms of language, both ethnically mixed Oromus and those with full Oromo descent held high leadership positions in Ethiopia. Notably, Iyasu V was the designated but uncrowned emperor of Ethiopia, while Haile Selassie I was the crowned and generally acknowledged emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974. Both these Ethiopian emperors are ethnically mixed, with Oromo parents and lineages. Haile Selassie's mother was paternally of Oromo descent and maternally of Gurage heritage, while his father was paternally Oromo and maternally Amhara. He consequently would have been considered Oromo in a patrilineal society, and would have been viewed as Gurage in a matrilineal one. However, in the main, Haile Selassie was regarded as Amhara, his paternal grandmother's royal lineage, through which he was able to ascend to the imperial throne. By the 1880s, Salah Selassie, king of Shelwa, allied with Raskobina's Shu and Oromo militia to expand his kingdom to the south and east, expanding into areas that hadn't been held together since the invasion of Ahmed Gran. Another famous leader of Ethiopia with Oromo descent was Ras Makonnen Wolde Mikael Gudessa, the governor of Hara, who served as the top general in the First Italo-Ethiopian War, playing a key role at the Battle of Adwa. He is the father of Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I. In 1973, Oromo discontent with their position led to the formation of the Oromo Liberation Front, which began political agitation in the Oromo areas. Also in 1973 there was a catastrophic famine in which over 250,000 people died from starvation before the government recognized the disaster and permitted relief measures. The majority who died were Oromus and Amharas from Wollo, Afars and Tigrayans. There were strikes and demonstrations in Addis Ababa in 1974, and in February of that year, Haile Selassie's government was replaced by the Derg, a military junta led by Mengistu Haile Mariam, but the council was still Amhara-dominated, with only 25 non-Amhara members out of 125. In 1975 the government declared all rural land state-owned, and announced the end of the tenancy system. However, much of the benefit of this reform was counteracted by compulsive collectivization, state farms and forced resettlement programs. In December 2009, a 96-page report titled Human Rights in Ethiopia, Through the Eyes of the Oromo Diaspora, compiled by the Advocates for Human Rights, documented human rights violations against the Oromo in Ethiopia under 3 successive regimes: the Abyssinian Empire under Haile Selassie, The Marxist Derg and the current Ethiopian government of the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, dominated by members of the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, and which was accused to have arrested approximately 20,000 suspected OLF members, to have driven most OLF leadership into exile, and to have effectively neutralized the OLF as a political force in Ethiopia. According to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Oromo Support Group recorded 594 extrajudicial killings of Oromos by Ethiopian government security forces and 43 disappearances in custody between 2005 and August 2008. Demographics. The Oromo people are the largest ethnic grouping in Ethiopia, which has a total of 74 ethnically diverse language groups. About 95% are settled agriculturalists and nomadic pastoralists, practicing archaic farming methods and living at subsistence level. A few live in the urban centers. Oromos today are mainly concentrated in the Oromia region in central Ethiopia, which is the largest region in the country in terms of both population and size. Group members also have a notable presence in northern Kenya. Language. The Oromo speak the Oromo language as a mother tongue. It belongs to the Kurusgetic branch of the Afro-Asiatic family. According to Ethnologue, there are around 40,467,900 Oromo speakers worldwide. The Oromo language is divided into four main linguistic varieties: Barana Arsi, Guji Oromo, Eastern Oromo, Orma, and West Central Oromo. Modern writing systems used to transcribe Oromo include the Latin script. The Ethiopic script had previously been used by Oromo communities in west-central Ethiopia up until the 1990s. Additionally, the Sapelo script was historically used to write Oromo. It was invented by the Oromo scholar Sheikh Bakri Sapelo during the 1950s. The Arabic script has also traditionally been used in areas with Muslim populations. Subgroups. The Oromo are divided into two major branches that break down into an assortment of clan families. From west to east, the Barana Oromo, also called the Boran, are a pastoralist group living in southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya. The Boran inhabit the former provinces of Shewa, Welaga, Ilubabor, Kaffa, Jimma, Sidamo, northern and northeastern Kenya, and some parts of Somalia. Barantu or Barachuma is the other moiety of the Oromo people. The Barantu Oromo inhabit the eastern parts of the Oromia region in the zones of Mirab Haragha or West Haragha, Arsi zone, Bale zone, Debub Mirab Shewa zone or Southwest Shewa, Dawa region, the Jijiga zone of the Somali region, Administrative Zone 3 of the Afar region, Oromia zone of the Amhara region, and are also found in the rare Azibo Warder in the Tigray region. Society and culture. Gadar Oromo society was traditionally structured in accordance with Gadar, a social stratification system partially based on an 8-year cycle of age sets. However, over the centuries, the age sets grew out of alignment with the actual ages of their members, and sometime in the 19th century, another age set system was instituted. Under Gadar, every 8 years, the Oromo would hold a popular assembly called the Gumi Gayo, where laws were established for the following 8 years. A democratically elected leader, the Abba-Gada, presided over the system for an 8-year term. Gadar is no longer in wide practice but remains influential. In a short article, Jeffrey W. Arnott described an Oromo rite of passage in which young men run over the backs of bulls surrounded by the village community. Religion. Waaq is the name of God in the traditional Oromo religion, which only about 3% of the population of Oromia follows today. those who do usually living in the Bahraini zone. In the 2007 Ethiopian census in the 88% Oromo region of Oromia, 47.5% were Muslims, 30.5% Orthodox Christians, 17.7% Protestant Christian, 3.3% traditional. Protestant Christianity is the fastest growing religion inside the Oromo community. In urban areas of Oromia, Orthodox Christianity constitute 51.2% of the population, followed by Islam 29.9% and Protestants 17.5%. But adherence to traditional practices and rituals is still common among many Oromo people regardless of religious background. Calendar. It is believed that the Oromo developed their own calendar around 300 BCE. The Oromo calendar is a lunar stellar calendrical system, relying on astronomical observations of the Moon in conjunction with 7 particular stars or constellations. Barana months Abit Fotasa, Kamsha, Bufa, Waxabajii, Oboriguda, Oboradika, Bira, Sikawa, Sadasar, Abrasa, Amaji, and Gurundala. Current most Oromos do not have political unity today due to their historical roles in the Ethiopian state and the region. The spread-out movement of different Oromo clans, and the differing religions inside the Oromo nation. Accordingly, Oromos played major roles in all 3 main political movements in Ethiopia during the 19th and 20th century. In addition to holding high powers during the centralist government and the monarchy, the Oromos in Tigray played a major role in the revolt inside the Tigray regional state, known as Wayana Revolt, challenging Emperor Haile Selassie I's rule in the 1940s. Simultaneously, both federalist and secessionist political forces developed inside the Oromo community. Presently, a number of ethnic-based political organizations have been formed to promote the interests of the Oromo. The first was the Mecca and Talama Self-Help Association, founded in January 1963. But was disbanded by the government after several increasingly tense confrontations in November 1966. Later groups include the Oromo Liberation Front, Oromo Federalist Democratic Movement, the United Liberation Forces of Oromia, the Islamic Front for the Liberation of Oromia, the Oromia Liberation Council, the Oromo National Congress and others. Another group, the Oromo People's Democratic Organization, is one of the 4 parties that formed the ruling Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front coalition. However, these Oromo groups do not act in unity. The ONC, for example, was part of the United Ethiopian Democratic Forces coalition that challenged the EPRDF in the Ethiopian general elections of 2005. A number of these groups seek to create an independent Oromo nation, some using armed force. Meanwhile, the ruling OPDO and several opposition political parties in the Ethiopian parliament believe in the unity of the country, which has 80 different ethnicities. But most Oromo opposition parties in Ethiopia condemn the economic and political inequalities in the country. Progress has been very slow with the Oromia International Bank, just recently established in 2008, though Oromo-owned Awash International Bank started early in the 1990s and with the first private Afan Oromo newspaper in Ethiopia, Jimma Times, also known as Yeru, recently established. Though the Jimma Times, Yeru newspaper has faced a lot of harassment and persecution from the Ethiopian government since its beginning. Abuse of Oromo media is widespread in Ethiopia and reflective of the general oppression Oromos face in the country. University departments in Ethiopia did not establish curriculum in Afan Oromo until the late 1990s. Various human rights organizations have publicized the government persecution of Oromos in Ethiopia for decades. In 2008, OFDM opposition party condemned the government's indirect role in the death of hundreds of Oromos in western Ethiopia. According to Amnesty International, between 2011 and 2014, at least 5,000 Oromos have been arrested based on their actual or suspected peaceful opposition to the government. These include thousands of peaceful protesters and hundreds of opposition political party members. The government anticipates a high level of opposition in Oromia, and signs of dissent are sought out and regularly, sometimes preemptively, suppressed. In numerous cases, actual or suspected dissenters have been detained without charge or trial, killed by security services during protests, arrests and in detention. According to Amnesty International, there is a sweeping repression in Oromo region of Ethiopia. On December 12, the reputed German paper Deutsche Welle reported violent protests in Oromo region of Ethiopia in which more 20 students were killed. According to the report, the students were protesting against the government's rezoning plan named Addis Ababa Master Plan. Notable Oromo people: Ali Birra, singer, poet, and nationalist; Sheikh Bakri Sapolo, Oromo historian and poet, who in the 1960s was the first African to invent an alphabet for an African language; Duratu Tulu, athlete; Ebizer Adunya, poet, singer-songwriter, nationalist, political activist; Fatuma Roba, first African woman to win the Olympic gold medal in a marathon; Guillermo Wald-Giorgis, former president of Ethiopia; Gobana Daka. According to Yates, he was from the Oromo community who was an extensive landowner, top-ranking general, and a zealous, loyal follower of his king Menelik II, who later died under mysterious circumstances with considerably less property to his name. Mulatu Teshome, president of Ethiopia; Negasso Gidada, former president of Ethiopia.